I was told marriage wasn't her priority, so I reclaimed my time, my money, and my life until she finally learned that priorities cut both ways. My wife delivered that sentence on a Tuesday night at the Copper Grill, the steakhouse I had made reservations at 2 weeks in advance because she had mentioned wanting to try their signature ribeye. I had planned the whole evening, got home early from my shift at the warehouse, showered, put on the shirt she had bought me for Christmas, and even stopped by the flower shop for those white roses she always posts on Instagram. The table was perfect, caramel at a corner booth, exactly how she liked it. We had been married 3 years, together for 5, and I thought I knew her pretty well. She had been acting distant lately, always busy with her book club friends, her yoga classes, her weekend art workshops. Every time I suggested we spend time together, she had something else going on. But tonight was different. Tonight was our night. She looked beautiful in that blue dress, the one that brought out her eyes. We ordered wine, shared an appetizer, talked about her new promotion at the marketing firm. Everything seemed normal until dessert arrived. That is when she dropped it. "I need you to understand something," she said, setting down her fork and looking directly at me. "Marriage does not mean you are my top priority. I have other important things in my life." The words hit me like a cold slap. I sat there, tiramisu halfway to my mouth, trying to process what I just heard. Other couples around us were laughing, clinking glasses, having normal conversations. Meanwhile, my wife had just informed me that our marriage was not her priority. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She leaned back in her chair, completely comfortable with what she just said. "It means I am not going to drop everything just because you want to spend time together. I have my career, my friends, my personal goals. You cannot expect me to revolve my life around being your wife." I took a sip of wine, buying myself time to think. Part of me wanted to argue, to point out all the times I had rearranged my schedule for her events, all the plans I had canceled when she needed support, all the ways I had made our marriage my priority. But something told me to take a different approach. "You are absolutely right," I said calmly. "Priorities are personal." She blinked, clearly expecting pushback. "Exactly. I am glad you understand." I signaled for the check. "I do understand more than you realize." The drive home was quiet. She scrolled through her phone while I processed everything. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I had made a decision. If marriage was not her priority, then it did not have to be mine either. That night, while she was in the bathroom doing her skincare routine, I sat on the edge of our bed thinking about what she had really told me. It was not just about time or attention. She had essentially said that being my wife was not important enough to influence her decisions, that our partnership came second to everything else in her life. For 3 years, I had operated under the assumption that we were building something together, that we were each other's person. Apparently, I had been wrong. She came out of the bathroom in her silk pajamas, acting like nothing had happened. "Did you set the alarm?" "Yes," I replied, watching her climb into bed. "Good. I have that early meeting with the design team tomorrow." She kissed my cheek, turned off her bedside lamp, and settled in for sleep. Just another Tuesday night for her. But for me, it was the night everything changed. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep. Tomorrow, I decided I would start living according to my own priorities. After all, as she had pointed out, priorities are personal, and my priorities were about to shift dramatically. The funny thing about declarations, like hers, is that they work both ways. She just taught me that marriage does not require sacrifice, that personal goals come first, that partners do not need to be each other's priority. I was about to become a very good student. The next morning started like any other, except it was not. She rushed around getting ready for her early meeting, grabbing coffee and a granola bar while I sat at the kitchen table with my own coffee, watching her routine. "Do not forget my book club is hosting that charity event on Saturday," she said, checking her phone. "It starts at 7 o'clock. Normally, I would have already cleared my Saturday night, would have turned down any plans to support her event, but this time I just nodded and said, 'Hope it goes well.'" She paused, looking at me over her phone. "You will be there, right?" "I will have to check my schedule," I replied, taking another sip of coffee. She stared at me for a moment, then shrugged. "Okay, well, let me know." And with that, she was gone. The first change I made was small but significant. My buddy from work had been inviting me to Friday happy hours for months. Every time I declined because Friday was our usual date night, or she had some event she wanted me to attend, or she just preferred having me home that afternoon. When he asked again, I said yes. "Really?" he said, genuinely surprised. "You sure your wife will not mind?" "Priorities are personal," I replied and meant it. Friday came, and instead of asking what she wanted to do for dinner, I simply told her I had plans. She looked confused but did not argue. I spent 3 hours at Murphy's Tavern with the guys from work, talking sports, laughing at stupid jokes, and remembering what it felt like to just be myself instead of half of a couple. When I got home around 9 o'clock, she was on the couch with a glass of wine watching some reality show. "How was your evening?" she asked, not looking away from the television. "Good. How was yours?" "Fine." That was it. No drama, no accusations, no guilt trips. Just two people living their separate lives under the same roof. The second change was bigger. Over the weekend, while she was at her yoga class, I called my insurance agent. The conversation was brief and professional. "I need to make some changes to my life insurance policy," I told him. "Of course. What kind of changes?" "I want to remove my wife as the beneficiary and split it between my parents and my brother instead." There was a pause. "Are you sure about this?" "Completely sure. I will need you to come in and sign some paperwork. How about Monday afternoon?" "Perfect. Monday afternoon." I sat in his office signing documents that effectively removed her from my financial future. It felt strange but also liberating. If marriage was not her priority, then she did not need to benefit from mine. The third change happened gradually. When she mentioned her book club's weekend trip to Napa Valley, I did not automatically block out those dates to miss her. Instead, I made my own plans. When her yoga studio had their annual fundraiser dinner, I politely declined and went to a baseball game with friends instead. "You have been going out a lot lately," she observed one evening, scrolling through her phone while I got ready to meet some college buddies for dinner. "Yes, it is nice having more time for friendships," I said, adjusting my tie. "I thought we could stay in tonight, maybe order takeout and watch a movie." "That sounds great for you," I replied, grabbing my keys. "I will probably be home around 11 o'clock. She looked genuinely puzzled. "Since when do you choose hanging out with friends over spending time with me?" I turned to face her, keeping my expression neutral. "Since you explained that marriage does not make spouses each other's top priority, I am just applying that same logic." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She had no argument because I was using her own words, her own philosophy. The most significant change came 3 weeks after that dinner at the Copper Grill. I had been thinking about our financial planning, our joint accounts, our shared goals. If she was not prioritizing our marriage, why was I prioritizing our shared future? I scheduled a meeting with our financial advisor and restructured our retirement accounts. I separated what was mine from what was ours, opened my own investment account, made decisions about my money without consulting her, just like she made decisions about her time without consulting me. When the paperwork arrived in the mail, she noticed immediately. "What is this?" she asked, holding up the envelope from our investment firm. "Just some account changes," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "What kind of changes?" "Personal ones." She opened the envelope and spent several minutes reading through the documents. I could feel her staring at me, trying to process what she was seeing. "You moved half our retirement savings into an individual account." "My retirement savings," I corrected, "into my individual account. But we are married. We plan these things together." I finally looked up from my laptop, giving her the same calm expression I had worn at dinner that night. "According to you, marriage does not make us each other's priority. So, I figured we should plan our futures individually too." She set the papers down on the coffee table, her hands shaking slightly. "That is not what I meant." "What did you mean then?" She struggled for words, opening and closing her mouth like she was trying to find an argument that made sense, but there was not one. She had established the rules of our relationship that night at dinner. I was simply playing by them. By the end of the month, I was a different man living a different life. I had standing plans with friends, my own financial goals, my own social calendar. I had stopped rearranging my world to accommodate hers, and surprisingly, I was happier than I had been in months. The irony was not lost on me. In trying to establish her independence from our marriage, she had accidentally freed me from the one-sided sacrifice I had been making for years. But she was starting to notice, and she did not like what she was seeing. 5 weeks after that dinner, she was starting to crack. It began with small comments. "You are never home anymore," she would say when I walked in from another evening out. Or, "We have not had dinner together in 3 days." Like, it was my responsibility to track our shared meals. I would respond the same way every time. "I am following your advice about priorities," but I could see it was getting to her. The confident woman who declared marriage was not her priority was now checking her phone constantly when I did not text her back immediately. She would hover near the door when I was getting ready to leave, like she wanted to ask where I was going, but could not quite bring herself to do it. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I was getting dressed for dinner with my college roommate who was in town for business. She had been watching me from the bed, her laptop open but clearly not working. "Another night out?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes. I have not seen him in 2 years. What about me?" I paused, shirt halfway buttoned. "What about you?" "Well, I am here. We could order pizza, watch that show we have been meaning to catch up on." I finished buttoning my shirt and reached for my jacket. "You can still do that. You do not need me there to enjoy your evening, but the first want you there." The words hung in the air between us. This was new territory. For the first time since that dinner, she was admitting she wanted my time, my attention, my presence. "That is sweet," I said, checking my wallet for my credit cards. "But I already made plans. Cancel them." I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. She was sitting cross-legged on our bed, laptop pushed aside, looking at me with an expression I had not seen in months. Vulnerability. "Why would I cancel my plans?" "Because I am your wife, right?" I said slowly. "But marriage does not make you my top priority. You explained that to me pretty clearly." She flinched like I had slapped her. "That is not fair." "What is not fair about it?" "I am living exactly how you said we should live. Independent, personal priorities first. Is not this what you wanted?" She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because what could she say? That she wanted me to prioritize her while she did not prioritize me. That marriage should matter to me even though it did not matter to her. I grabbed my keys from the dresser. "I will be home around 10 o'clock. Wait." Her voice was smaller now. "Can we talk when you get back? If you are still awake." Dinner with my friend was great. We talked about his new job in Seattle, his recent breakup, the old days when we thought we had everything figured out. He noticed I seemed different, more relaxed. "Marriage suits you," he said over dessert. I almost laughed. "Does it?" "Yes. You seem more confident, less stressed than you were a few years ago. If only he knew." The confidence was not coming from marriage. It was coming from finally standing up for myself within it. When I got home at 10:15, she was still awake, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine and her phone face down beside her. She had changed into those gray sweatpants she wore when she was feeling insecure. "How was dinner?" she asked. "Good. How was your evening?" "Boring." She took a sip of wine, then looked at me directly. "I have been thinking about what you said earlier." I sat down in the armchair across from her, not on the couch beside her like I used to. "What about it? You are angry with me?" "I am not angry. Then what is this?" She gestured between us. "This distance, this coldness. You are punishing me." I leaned back in the chair, considering her words. "I am not punishing you. I am protecting myself." "From what?" "From being the only person in this marriage who actually treats it like a marriage." She set down her wine glass, her hands trembling slightly. "That is not true, is not it? When is the last time you changed your plans for me? When is the last time you chose spending time with me over something else you wanted to do?" The silence stretched between us. She could not answer because we both knew the truth. "I work hard," she said finally. "I have goals, ambitions. I cannot just drop everything to be at your beck and call. I never asked you to drop everything. I asked you to include me in your priorities. There is a difference. I do include you, do you? Because 5 weeks ago you made it very clear that marriage does not make me your priority. So, I decided marriage does not make you mine either." She was crying now, quiet tears that she kept wiping away with the back of her hand. "I did not mean it like that." "How did you mean it then?" "I meant that I am still my own person, that I have my own life, and now I have mine." She looked up at me, mascara smudged under her eyes. "Is this how it is going to be? We are just roommates who share a bed." "I do not know," I said honestly. "You set the rules. I am just following them." "I want to change the rules." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "Because I miss you. You miss having someone who makes you their priority while not having to do the same in return. That is not what I miss." "Then what?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I miss feeling like we are a team." I stood up from the chair. "We cannot be a team when only one person is playing for the team." As I headed toward the stairs, she called after me. "Where are you going?" "To bed. I have an early morning." "With who?" I paused on the bottom step. "With myself. To the gym." Because apparently personal priorities come first. I left her sitting there with her wine and her tears, finally getting a taste of what it felt like to not be someone's priority. The irony was delicious. She had wanted independence and now she had it. She just had not realized that independence worked both ways. The explosion happened on a Sunday morning, and honestly, I saw it coming from a mile away. I was in the kitchen making coffee and scanning through ESPN on my phone when she stormed in, wearing that same ratty oversized t-shirt she had slept in. Her hair was a mess, and she had that wild look in her eyes that meant she had been lying awake thinking all night. "I feel invisible to you," she shouted, slamming her palm on the counter. I looked up from my phone calmly. "Good morning to you too. Do not you dare act like this is normal." Her voice was shaking with frustration. "We have been together for 5 years, married for 3, and now you treat me like I am some random roommate you barely tolerate." I took a sip of my coffee, letting her words hang in the air. Interesting choice of words. What is that supposed to mean? "You feel invisible," I said, setting down my mug. "But were not you the one who said marriage does not make you my top priority? That you have other important things?" Her face flushed red. "That does not mean I want to be ignored. I am not ignoring you. I am treating you exactly how you said you wanted to be treated. As an independent person with your own priorities who does not need her husband's constant attention, you are twisting my words." I leaned against the counter, studying her face. She looked desperate, frantic even. This was a woman who was used to having her cake and eating it too, and now she was discovering that actions have consequences. "Am I? Because I remember that conversation pretty clearly. You said marriage does not mean you are my top priority. You said you have other important things. You said I cannot expect you to revolve your life around being my wife." I was talking about balance. Were you? Because it sounded like you were talking about hierarchy, and you made it pretty clear where I ranked. She ran her hands through her hair, pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal. "This is ridiculous. You are acting like a child. Actually, I am acting like an adult who learned a valuable lesson about relationships. You taught me that priority streets go both ways." That stopped her pacing. "What does that mean?" "It means you cannot demand to be someone's priority while refusing to make them yours. It does not work that way. I never said you were not my priority." I raised an eyebrow. "Did not you?" "Because when I asked what your statement meant, you said you would not drop everything just because I wanted to spend time together. You said you had your career, your friends, your personal goals. You said I could not expect you to revolve your life around being my wife." Exactly word for word, and she knew it. "That is different," she said weakly. "How is it different?" "Because," she struggled, grasping for an explanation that would make sense. "Because I did not mean I do not care about you. And I do not mean I do not care about you either. I just care about me too now. You taught me that is okay. Stop saying I taught you things." "But you did. You taught me that marriage is just a piece of paper that does not change how we prioritize our lives. You taught me that personal goals come first. You taught me that wanting my spouse's time and attention was unreasonable. I never said that. You said I could not expect you to drop everything to spend time with me. How is that different from what I am doing now?" She slammed her hand on the counter again, but this time it was more defeated than angry. "Because it is different when you do it." I could not help but laugh, which made her even more furious. "Do not you dare laugh at me." "I am not laughing at you, I am laughing at the situation. Do you hear yourself right now? It is different when I do it." "Why?" "Because you are allowed to have boundaries and priorities. But I am not. That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "Because from where I am standing, it looks like you wanted the freedom to put yourself first while expecting me to put you first. And now that I am putting myself first too, you do not like how it feels." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "I miss my husband. Your husband is right here. He is just not your personal assistant anymore. You used to care about my events, my friends, my interests. I still care. I just do not make them my responsibility anymore. There is a difference. This is not how marriage is supposed to work." I sat down my coffee mug and looked at her directly. "You are absolutely right. Marriage is not supposed to work like this. Marriage is supposed to be two people making each other a priority, supporting each other's goals and building a life together. But that is not what you wanted." "Yes, it is. No, it is not. What you wanted was for me to make you a priority while you kept all your options open. You wanted to be free to choose your book club over our date nights, your yoga retreats over our weekend plans, your personal goals over our shared ones, and you wanted me to be okay with always coming second." She leaned against the refrigerator, her shoulders shaking. "I just wanted to maintain my independence. And you have it. Congratulations, you are completely independent now. This is not what I wanted." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you explained to me how unimportant our marriage was to you." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I never said it was unimportant. You did not have to say it. You showed me every time you chose something else over time with me. Every time you made plans without considering how they affected us. Every time you acted like being my wife was just one item on a long list of things you had to manage. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. But love is not enough when only one person is willing to prioritize the relationship. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, looking small and lost. So, what happens now? That depends on you, on me. You created this dynamic. You set these boundaries. You established these rules. If you want something different, you're going to have to figure out what that looks like. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for some hint of the man who used to rearrange his entire life to make her happy. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who had learned the value of reciprocity. I do not know how, she said finally. Then I guess you will figure it out the same way I did, by deciding what actually matters to you. I grabbed my gym bag from the counter and headed toward the door. Where are you going? To the gym. It is Sunday, which means I have plans. What about breakfast? What about talking about this? You can make breakfast if you want. As for talking, we just did. The question is whether you actually heard what I said. I left her standing in the kitchen, finally understanding that feeling invisible works both ways. And priority streets, they definitely go both ways too. When I got back from the gym 2 hours later, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a stack of papers spread out in front of her. She had showered and gotten dressed, which was unusual for a Sunday morning. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes still puffy, but more focused now. We need to talk, she said, gesturing to the papers. I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and sat down across from her. About what? About these. She pushed a document toward me. I have been going through our finances, trying to understand what you have changed. I glanced at the paper. It was a printout of our joint checking account, and you moved $12,000 into your personal account last month. My money that I earned. Yes, but we always discussed big financial decisions together. I took a long drink of water, studying her face. We used to discuss them together when we were building a shared future. Now we are apparently building separate ones. She pulled out another document. And this life insurance change. You removed me completely. That is correct. But what if something happens to you? Then my parents and my brother will be taken care of. You know, the people who actually prioritize our relationship. She flinched. That is cruel. It is practical. Why would I leave money to someone who does not consider being my wife a priority? Because I am your wife. Being my wife is just a title if it does not come with any actual commitment to our partnership. She shuffled through more papers, her hands shaking slightly. You changed our retirement planning too. Split everything. I split my contributions. Your 401k is still yours. But we had goals. We were going to retire to that cabin in Colorado. We talked about traveling together. We talked about a lot of things. Then you explained that marriage does not make me your priority, so I figured our shared dreams were not really shared after all. She set the papers down and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Panic. Pure, undisguised panic. You are destroying our entire life together. I am not destroying anything. I am just stopping building it alone. What does that mean? I leaned back in my chair, choosing my words carefully. For 3 years, I have been the one making sacrifices. I have been the one rearranging my schedule, turning down opportunities, putting your needs first. I have been building our life together while you have been building your individual life that happens, to include a husband when convenient. That is not true, is not it. When is the last time you turned down something you wanted to do because it conflicted with something I wanted to do? The silence stretched between us. She could not answer because we both knew she never had. When is the last time you chose time with me over time with your friends? More silence. When is the last time you made a decision based on what was best for us instead of what was best for you? She was crying again, but quietly this time. I thought I could have both. Have what? Both. Independence and marriage. You can. But independence means being responsible for yourself. It means not expecting someone else to sacrifice while you do not. It means accepting that if you are not willing to prioritize your partner, they might not prioritize you either. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I never thought you would actually stop caring about me. I have not stopped caring about you. I have stopped making you my only priority while being none of yours. But you were happy. We were happy. I was happy making you happy. There is a difference, and that only works when both people are committed to making each other happy. She stared at the financial documents spread across the table. So, this is it. You have just decided we are done. I have decided I am done being in a one-sided marriage. Whether we are actually done depends on whether you want to be in a real partnership or if you want to keep things the way they were. I do not understand the difference. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our backyard where we planted those rose bushes together 2 springs ago. A real partnership means we both sacrifice sometimes. It means we both prioritize each other in our relationship. It means we make decisions together because we are building something together. And what we had before was me being your support system while you lived your best individual life. She was quiet for several minutes, processing what I had said. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I do not know how to be different than maybe you are not ready to be married. Do not say that. I turned back to face her. Why not? Marriage is not just about love. It is about partnership, commitment, shared priorities. If you cannot handle those things, then maybe we jumped into this too fast. I want to learn. Do you? Or do you just want things to go back to how they were because you are uncomfortable with the consequences of your choices? She looked down at her hands. I do not know. Well, that is honest at least. What happens while I figure it out? Life continues. I continue living according to my priorities, you continue living according to yours. If those priorities start to align again, maybe we can rebuild something. If they do not, then we will know where we stand. And in the meantime, you get exactly what you asked for, complete independence to pursue your goals without worrying about what your husband thinks or needs. She gathered up the financial documents, her movements slow and defeated. This is not what I wanted. What did you want? I wanted you to support my independence. I am supporting it. I am just not subsidizing it anymore. She looked confused. What is the difference? Supporting your independence means cheering you on while you build your own life. Subsidizing it means sacrificing my own needs so you can have everything you want without having to choose or compromise. I never asked you to sacrifice anything. You did not have to ask. I volunteered. But volunteers can stop volunteering when they realize the cause does not care about them. She closed her laptop and stacked the papers neatly. I need time to think, take all the time you need. But understand that while you are thinking, I am living, and I am not putting my life on hold, waiting for you to decide whether our marriage matters to you or not. As she left the kitchen, she paused in the doorway. Do you still love me? Yes. But love without respect and partnership is not enough to build a marriage on. And if I cannot figure out how to be different, then we will both be free to find partners who share our priorities. She stood there for another moment, then walked away. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of our bedroom door closing. I sat back down at the table, looking at the financial documents she had left behind. Numbers do not lie. They showed exactly what I had done, separated my future from hers until she decided whether she wanted to build a shared one. The ball was in her court now. The question was whether she would actually pick it up and play, or if she would keep expecting me to play for both of us. 3 weeks later, everything changed. I came home from work on a Friday to find her in the kitchen making dinner. Not ordering takeout, not heating up leftovers, but actually cooking. She had changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, and she looked nervous. I canceled my book club tonight, she said without looking up from the stove. I set my keys on the counter. Why? Because I wanted to cook dinner for my husband. The words hung in the air. Not I wanted to cook dinner, not I thought we could eat together. She had said my husband like it actually meant something to her. Smells good, I said, genuinely meaning it. Over dinner, she did something she had not done in months. She asked about my day, really asked, with follow-up questions and actual interest in my answers. She told me about her work projects, but instead of just listing her achievements, she talked about how they affected our finances, our future. I have been thinking about what you said, she said over dessert, about priorities and partnership. And you were right. I wanted all the benefits of marriage without any of the responsibilities. I did not respond immediately. Words were easy. I had learned that actions mattered more. I know you do not trust me yet, she continued. I know I have to prove I have changed, but I want to try. What does that look like? She took a deep breath. It looks like making us a priority. Really making us a priority. It looks like considering you and I make decisions. It looks like being a partner instead of just a roommate who shares expenses. Those are nice words. I know they are just words right now, but I want to show you over the next month. She did show me. She turned down a weekend yoga retreat to stay home with me. She rescheduled a book club meeting that conflicted with a dinner I had planned. She started asking about my friends, my interests, my goals. But the real moment came on a quiet Sunday morning. We were having coffee and reading the newspaper when she said something that stopped me cold. I have been thinking about having a baby. I looked up from the sports section. What? A baby? Us having a baby? This was the woman who had always said she was not ready, that her career came first, that children would limit her freedom. Why now? She sat down her coffee and looked at me directly. Because I realized that building a life with someone means actually building it together, and I want to build something with you. Are you sure? Because 6 months ago, you said kids would interfere with your personal goals. 6 months ago, I thought personal goals and marriage goals were separate things. I was wrong. We talked for hours that day about children, about our future, about what kind of partnership we wanted to build. For the first time in our relationship, she talked about we more than I. I know I hurt you, she said as the sun was setting. I know I made you feel like you did not matter to me, but you do matter more than anything. How do I know this is not just because you do not like the consequences of your choices? Because I am not asking you to go back to how things were. I am asking if we can build something new, something better. I studied her face, looking for the self-centered woman who declared marriage was not her priority. She was still there, but she seemed smaller somehow. Humbled. What about your independence? I figured out that real independence means choosing who and what matters to you, and you matter to me. Our marriage matters to me. 6 months later, she was pregnant. Not because I demanded it, but because she genuinely wanted to build a family with me. She had learned what I tried to teach her through my actions. Priority streets really do go both ways. The woman who once said, marriage did not make me her priority, now introduces me as the most important person in her life. Sometimes people need to lose something to understand its value. Sometimes they need to feel invisible to understand what visibility means. And sometimes they need to learn that getting what you ask for is not always what you actually want. She got her independence. Then she chose to share it with me.